Welcome back to the Happiness Happens podcast, my friend. I'm Simona, host of the show, and I'm so excited to have you back for another incredible conversation today. This one is going to open your heart, your soul, your mind, and it will completely shift and transform the way that you think about how you're making decisions in your life. That's right. We are talking about making decisions. So, with that in mind, I want to introduce you to my guest today. His name is DJ Logory, and he is the co-founder of Acres of Diamonds and founder with over 4 years of experience in helping people navigate the world of mental McDonald's by developing mental fitness and emotionally intelligent leadership habits. DJ is a certified heroic coach focusing on eating, moving, and sleeping, and the host of the Libraries and Weight Rooms podcast, where he shares insights and stories on mental and physical fitness and unique ways to look at life. I really, really enjoyed our conversation today because we talk about mental fitness and how to have more of it, how to access it, and how it will completely transform your life. Before we get into our conversation, I want to remind you, if you haven't heard before or if you have not been aware, I have a happiness guide, which you can find in the link in the show notes below. It is a way to tap fully into your purpose, find that inner fulfillment, and make the changes that you want in your life every single day starting today. So you can grab the link for that in the show notes below. Okay, let's get into today's conversation with my friend, DJ. DJ, welcome to the Happiness Happens podcast. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Simona. Very excited to talk about happiness. What other topic would we want to talk about?
I can't think of one thing.
Awesome.
I love it. No, I'm super excited to have this chat with you. We're going to dive into so many different areas. I'm just going to pause myself there. But I want to ask you my first question, and it's a question that I've asked all of my guests when they come on the show, and it's my first question for everyone, and it is, what does happiness mean to you?
So it's funny, I almost didn't want to come with an answer prepared. I just wanted to have it just kind of fly out of me. And I think happiness to me is almost a decision.
Oh.
And I think our lives are really just a timeline of decisions. And I think our environments are going to change throughout our lives. And I think we can decide to be happy in those environments based upon what's important to us in those environments, what we're choosing to notice in those environments, where we're deciding to live. Are we living in the gain or are we living in the gap? And so I think happiness to me essentially means, as rational as it sounds, making a decision to actually be happy.
That's a really interesting perspective on it. I've never had anyone say that before. And I really like that you did, because I think that, okay, so I was having this conversation earlier today. And at some point, we go through all kinds of things in life, but at some point we have to make a choice. You know what I mean? Like, we have to make a choice to have a different thought, have a different action, have a different feeling, go a different direction, try something new. Those are all decisions. And
Mhm.
do you think that people worry about making a decision, that maybe they would make the wrong decision or the right
Mhm.
decision, and then almost be fearful of the right decision?
Yeah, I think so. There's this saying that I heard a couple weeks ago that says we suffer more in imagination than we do in reality.
Oh
And
my
so,
gosh.
which is,
That's good.
right? And I think a lot of that has to do with, all right, what are the right decisions that I need to make or that I should be making, right? If we're going to judge ourselves in order to get me to where I ultimately want to go. And a majority of the time, we probably aren't going to know exactly the right decisions, because if we knew exactly the right decisions, we would probably be making them, right? And I think that's a really important thing to notice is we are all literally doing the best we can in every given moment with everything that we have. So if we had more, or if we knew more, or if we were more as a person, we would probably make those decisions that align with all of those alleys. Yet, if we just align with essentially who we are in this moment, we're always going to actually make the best decision that we can in any given moment, even when we look back a year, 5, 10 years from now and go, I wish I would have done that. Well, in that moment, you didn't do that, right? You made this decision, and that was what ended up leading you to this point. So, this we suffer more in imagination than we do in reality. If we allow ourselves the grace to realize, all right, I'm literally making the best decisions that I can in any given moment, then our reality is just going to essentially unfold based upon those decisions.
Mm-hmm. What
And
happens if the reality doesn't unfold in the way that you thought it would, and it starts to head down this like path of like, oh my goodness, did I make all these kinds of wrong choices? Like, I think there's a difference. Like, you listen to your intuition. I'm someone who listens to my intuition all the time. I make decisions out of my intuition. I flip my whole life upside down because of my intuition. And then there's always that small fear in the back of my mind that's like, but what if it was the wrong choice? Even though it's not. Like, I'm saying that to you out loud, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I know it's not, but like, what if someone listening,
So I think we can psych ourselves into an unlimited amount of choices and believing that there always is going to be a better choice, right? It's like, hey, I'm going to make this choice, yet there's probably 10 other choices that are probably going to be better, yet I'm not necessarily aware of them. And so I think if we make a choice and we start to then go into that choice and we start to behave, based aligned with whatever choice that is, if we consistently are going back and saying, is this the wrong choice? Our behavior is going to align with that energy, right? Our behavior is going to align with that possibility that this was the right choice. And so I think it's kind of like I kind of like created this idea a couple days ago. Confidence is doing things with evidence and courage is doing things without evidence.
Like
And
that a lot.
so if we're courageous enough to still go down that path and try the best to not question all of the things that we're doing along that path, that's very courageous, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we might not necessarily have evidence that that was the right decision,
Right.
right? And so as we start to build the evidence, then that courage starts to kind of translate into confidence. And so I think we have to really mitigate and be aware of the way that we are perceiving a wrong choice was really just the choice that I made in that moment.
Mm-hmm. I like that. And it's also this idea of confirmation bias, right?
Yeah,
Where if you're looking for something, you're going to find it. And
exactly.
I'm someone that I'm always looking for everything on both sides. I'm like, show me the proof on both sides. And it's interesting too, because I've never been someone, I would say that I've never really been someone who's like a pessimist. Like, I'm a pretty optimistic person. And, I tend to look on like the bright side of pretty much everything in life. But I feel like lately I'm trying to find the bad, because
Hmm.
I feel like it's this idea of, I already had what I thought would have been good enough, and now I'm trying to find the bad. So,
So,
what would you say to someone like me?
so do you think you're trying to find the bad because you have experienced so much good and it's almost like you don't deserve the good?
Yes. Yes. It's almost like this, like, this is as good as it's going to get, and there can't possibly be anything more, because how much good does one person get to have?
So I completely resonate with that. I completely connect with that. And I think too, it's a matter of almost feeling guilty
Hmm.
for feeling good,
You
right?
nailed it.
Which I think is very interesting because I remember I was in a group and it was in a mental fitness group with one of our clients, and I asked him, I said, raise your hand if you ever feel bad for taking time for yourself. And
Hmm.
every single person raised their hand. And I said, all right, why? And it was like silence in the group. And I said, do we seriously feel guilty for feeling good or for
Hmm.
taking time for ourselves? Right? When so much has been given to us, or we have so many blessings in our lives, and we're healthy and we're strong and we're smart and we're working towards creating things that are going to change the world and impact people, do we really need the duality of having to pull ourselves back and say, hey, it's not that good. Let me notice a couple things that are bad, right? Like, I think we can psych ourselves into that. And so I was in a coaching session with my coach once, and one of the things that I'm very adamant about is discipline and staying consistent with the things that are important to me.
Yeah.
And I remember I listed like 6 things that I was undisciplined with that I wanted to get better with. And she goes, are you literally just noticing the things that you're undisciplined with because you're so disciplined?
Oh,
Right. And it's the same thing kind of here, right? Am I just noticing the things that I'm not happy with because I'm so happy? Like, that's
and
just a
is that
completely different
unhappiness
story.
even real?
Is
You
it
know what I
right?
mean?
be created.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think this goes back to the idea of mental fitness in and of itself, because what you were saying earlier before we jumped into this little part here, you know, this idea of like that confirmation bias that you find, you know, the good, you find the bad, and you can sit on each side of those. One thing that struck me is I think this goes back to A, the idea of mental fitness, and B, how strong is your mental fitness? Because I feel like that might be the core, like the root of either allowing you to skew more on the positive side or
Hmm.
skew more on the negative side. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like that is like the root cause. And if
Hmm.
that's not right, then how do you get anything else aligned for you? I won't even like to use the word right and wrong because like it doesn't even exist, but like aligned or not aligned there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I completely agree with that. And I think too, the mentally fit people are solution oriented thinkers.
Hmm.
They're not necessarily problem oriented thinkers. So like I'm always curious about like if a problem gets up, who's the person who's really pissed off about that there's a problem, right? That's might not necessarily be the person you want to be around. I'm really interested in the person who's like, all right, great, there's a problem, cool, what's the solution? Right? Let's focus our energy, let's focus our time, let's focus our willpower and our intelligence on actually just living in a possible solution, even if we don't know exactly what it is yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's essentially, I mean, that's a very simple look at mental fitness, right? How do we handle challenge with more emotional resilience and curiosity? Challenge is everywhere. How long do I want to stay in that challenge? Once I've absorbed it, I got my feelings, right? I'm understanding it a little bit better. Then I move into a solution, right? And one of the things that we talk about is the RAS, right? The reticular activating system. And if kind of to your confirmation bias, right? If I ask myself, why am I a dumbass? I'm going to have a lot of answers of why I'm a dumbass, right? Like it's tough to say, but yeah, if I ask myself that question, I'm going to come up with a list of 10 reasons why I am that type of person. At the other side, if I say, why am I a creative genius? I'm going to come
Mm.
up with 10 reasons, right? So I think if we condition our brain from whether you want to call it mental fitness or emotional resilience or finding your gains instead of noticing your gaps, we can condition our brain to essentially find more happiness in our lives. And that's why I say, like with your first question, what does happiness mean to you? I ultimately think happiness is a decision, right? It's a
Mm-hmm.
decision that I can just, and it's not necessarily, I don't want to be toxically happy, right? I don't want to, which I think people could maybe just describe this as or toxically positive. Yet I think I'm going to operate a little bit better if I try to be happy
Mm-hmm.
or if I try to stay positive,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I understand when things aren't going that great, we can be honest and we can be authentic in those moments and feel the emotions, understand the environment, understand what's going on. And then once we're ready, let's go to a place where I'm going to operate better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And I think too, when you're in this place of trying to understand happiness or trying to find more of it in your life and making all of these decisions that you're hoping are going to align to you and to your future and to the life you want to create, I think it's also important to remember too that like it's not necessarily like, yes, toxic positivity is definitely a thing. And also, I can name so many times in my life where I wasn't technically, quote unquote, happy in that moment, but I made a decision that I knew was going to serve my highest and best good always in the future. And so it's kind of like that idea of setting yourself up for the alignment and the peace that you're going to find in your life
Mm-hmm.
when you make the decisions that align for you, you know?
Yeah, and maybe too a better term is almost like neutral happiness,
I like that.
where something bad has hit me, right? And we're going to label it as bad. An event is in my life. There's a lot of decisions that we can make in that moment, right? The toxically positive way is, hey, stay positive, right? And nobody wants to hear stay positive when you're really struggling, right? We
Yeah,
want to hear, hey, I want you to sit down. I want you to listen to me for hours upon end because I need to vent, right? And I need to feel seen, heard, and understood right now.
exactly.
So right, so we have these decisions that we can make in every moment essentially of our life. And the way like my brain kind of visualizes is there's like a negative, there's a neutral, and there's a positive. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we're ultimately living in the neutral, and I want to try and live in the positive more often than not because it just feels better.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to show up as a better young man or as a better brother or partner or friend. Having said that, it doesn't discount all the moments where I still do feel a little negative,
Hmm.
right? And it's still a thing. And I'm not trying to go from negative to positive. I'm really just trying to go from negative to neutral, right?
Ooh.
Just get me into the neutral happiness where I'm not focusing a ton on the bad things, and I haven't even started to focus on the possible gifts or opportunities or serving outcomes that could possibly be in the near future. Just let me be neutral right now, right? And I think that is ultimately where we get to really feel the emotion, because when we're in a negative headspace, we're going to have a lot of, it's going to be a storm, right, of
Yeah.
emotion that's going on. When we're in a positive headspace, it's going to be the opposite of a sunny, sunshiny day, right? So when we're neutral, we're not necessarily in either of them. So I think that's really when we can start to understand, all right, what's going on, right? How am I feeling? What do I need to do, or who do I need to become to go to where I want to go?
That's genius. I really like this idea of neutrality because I think it takes I'm going to use the word drama out
Mhm.
of the big things that happen in life. Because, and I'm not saying it in a bad way, like it's not drama in the sense that, like, if something really bad happens, to not react in a way that is an appropriate response for what that thing happened. Or, you have a situation in life that is really exciting. You had a cool opportunity, like you're so excited about this thing coming up. What I mean by drama is, I think a lot of the times the stories that play in our mind exacerbate the problem. But so it creates even more emotion, and it creates even more fuel to whatever the thing is that is happening in your life. But if you can come back to a place of neutrality, that is when you find peace. And I personally define happiness by inner peace, because I feel like when I have inner peace in the inside, I have outer peace in the world around me, in my
Mm.
world around me, not the world around me, but my world around me. And when you operate from your own inner peace and your own ability to stay in that space of, so it is, you can help shift conversations with friends, with family, clients. You respond to clients differently in a more empowered way. And then that's how we start to make small shifts in the world, right? People always ask, well, how do I change everything, everything around me? But you change everything around you by changing how you feel on the inside about you. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think it's a very strong feeling
Hmm.
when we talk about inner peace, because I'm not necessarily letting external factors determine if I'm happy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this is why I continue to come back to it's a decision, because what makes me really happy might not make you very happy, right? And
Exactly.
vice versa.
I
Like
know for
one of
sure that when your
right.
decisions to go for a run at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, that's not my definition of happiness.
And see, like that is my like that. I'm so happy you brought that up. Like that literally fuels me with happiness,
Yes.
right? Even if I
Yes.
don't want to do it, and right, there's a whole discussion on actually getting your shoes on, right, going for the run. Yet when you're in that activity, I literally just I'm like smiling the whole time, and I'm locked in, and I'm like I am just happy. I'm just so happy right now, and I
Why?
think right, why am I happy?
Yeah.
I think so. I think one of the reasons is because I am a true believer that happiness is connected to progress.
Hmm.
And so like when we talk about making decisions, I want to make decisions that make me feel like I'm making more progress.
I love that.
And just like it's relative, right? Progress for me looks different than progress for you. And that to me is really important because it's almost validation, or it's evidence of growth,
Mm-hmm.
of moving forward. Even if you're in a tough moment and you're handling it well, that's still growth, right? It's still moving forward. And so when I am on a run, or if I am working out, or if I am listening to a podcast or investing in myself in some way, I'm happy because I'm connecting it to, okay, Deej, right? This is the story I'm telling in my head. Deej, you're progressing, right? You're
Hmm.
moving forward. And this is a matter of your own making. It's a matter of your own decisions. And I think that's inner peace. And I think that's your inner power. And I think that's what will ultimately help you manage a lot of your stress and anxiety too, because then you're not trying to please and make sure everybody else around you is happy. It's like let me make sure I'm good first before I start to step outside into that zone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. And so tell me this, when we talk about decisions and you look back on all of the decisions that you have gotten to make,
Mm-hmm.
over the last years, weeks, months, or what have you, do you find there's more magnitude in the big decisions or in the small, or
Great
both
question.
equally?
I think big decisions are just a lot of really little ones.
Ooh, tell me more. I like that.
I,
We're done here
yeah.
today. Thank you so much for tuning in. No, I'm just kidding.
So like for example, so I recently just moved from Rochester, New York to Tampa, Florida. And that was a big decision. Yet within that big decision, there were hundreds of little decisions. And in order for that one decision to be fully made and followed through, I had to fully follow through with all those little decisions first. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think if you want to make like some big changes, and I actually was just doing a podcast last week with somebody, and they talked very similar to this about it's the small moments that are really going to make an impact because the compound effect, right? If I make a lot of really good small decisions, that eventually is going to lead into one great decision, whether it was to invest in yourself or whether it was to find the right partner, physical fitness, mental fitness, right? Whatever it is, if we stay consistent with the small little things that we think are right, that I individually think are right, it's going to end up resulting in large, good, positive decisions, right? If we continue to move forward through that. And so that's why I always think about like behavior and how am I behaving in order to actually make this decision? Because ultimately that's going to help me get to where I want to go or the outcomes that I want. So
Mm-hmm.
to make an accentuated or an exuberated answer or whatever your word was, right? I think a big decisions are just really small decisions over and over and over again.
I love that. I think that's really, really important. And so, okay, tell me about how you came up with this concept of mental fitness, because I don't think that's something that people talk about. Like, I hope you've trademarked it.
It's a new sexy term that we're
It is. It
that
is. We
we're
love that.
yeah. So basically the way that I thought about it was, so I was big into physical fitness because physical fitness saved me in a way. It helped me with my confidence. It helped me with who I was as a young man. And it allowed me to almost build the version of me that I really loved, right? Because I think at some points in our lives, we might not necessarily love ourselves a ton. And I think there's a lot of things that we can do in order to get to that point. So when I had just graduated college, I really started to struggle mentally a little bit with a lot of things that I didn't really understand what was going on.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was my business partner and we ended up getting together. And at the time we weren't business partners. I just wanted to talk to somebody, right? I just wanted to be seen, heard, and understood, I think, in those moments. And we came across this idea of basically, instead of looking at mental health as how healthy is our mind, I said, what if we did this in like a fitness way? I said, and what if we
Mm.
basically said, how strong is my mind? Right? Like how, when a challenge hits, am I healthy enough to handle that challenge? It's like everybody had these negative views of mental health and what it was. And I said, let's just stop focusing on that. Let's focus on something that is essentially very close in proximity, yet feels a lot different, right? How strong is my mind? Mental fitness. People are like, oh yeah, like let's improve our mind. When really it's like, this is essentially improving your mental health, right? Because it's the same concept as physical fitness. If I improve my physical fitness, I'm going to get physically healthier, right? So I might look better, right? I might feel better. And that was going to translate into a lot of things. Well, if I did that with my mind, what do I think would happen? Who would I become from a father standpoint? Who would I become from a brother standpoint? How good of an employee would I become? A manager, right? CEO, if I started to train my mind like a muscle. And
Mm.
so we started to basically say, yeah, we're a mental fitness and EQ leadership company. And people were like, what's mental fitness?
Hmm.
Right. And it started to just kind of create this idea that treat your mind like a muscle and train it like a muscle in order to handle all of the challenge that will come into your life.
Love that. And now, for someone who's listening right now, how do they start? like 1, 2, or 3 ways where you can start to tap into this idea of mental fitness
Mm-hmm.
and actually make progress towards it?
So there is one of our partners that we partnered with a couple of years ago is called Positive Intelligence, and they are essentially a technology company that created a mental fitness app. And what we did
Oh,
is we took all the things that we believed in around mental fitness and EQ leadership, and we combined it with kind of their values and created this very interesting experience. And so one of the things that they talk about in their program is PQ reps. And so
okay.
I'll do my best to essentially explain what they are. They are 10-second concentrations on your on your senses. So essentially one would be rubbing your fingertips together with such a tension that you can actually feel the fingertip ridges,
Oh, wow.
right?
Okay.
And so if you do that for 10 seconds at a time, what that's doing is that's taking your mind, because your mind is everywhere at all times, right? Squirrel, right? There's things all around, and it's bringing it back to center. And
Hmm.
so what we do is throughout our days, so like I have a full mental fitness routine. And so, like throughout my day, I will do these PQ reps every 3 hours. I'll do one in the morning, one at night, and it keeps my mind centered. And essentially, what it's doing is building those new neural pathways. Like, so mental fitness is building a stronger mind, right? Essentially, that's what we're doing. We're building new neural pathways, new habits of thinking. And so, what you can do to essentially start on a mental fitness journey is so like one of the ones is you can rub your fingertips together to essentially center yourself. One of the things you can do is you can listen to the sound that is closest to you for 10 seconds.
Hmm.
So close your eyes and like literally listen to the sound that's closest to you for 10 seconds, and then listen to a sound that is as far away from you as you can for 10 seconds.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of different there's auditory ones, there's visual ones, there's breathing ones, there's tactile ones. And so they've done a great job of kind of creating a physical movement for intentional thinking.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so I really believed in that type of work because it aligned with the things I was doing from a physical fitness standpoint. And that's where we kind of came up with this term of mental fitness and little things that people can do as well. And if anybody wants to, one of the things that we also do, I don't know if you want me to tell them of like a little thing that they can enroll in. They're
Yeah.
completely free. They're
Yeah,
mental fitness
absolutely.
tips. And so basically, we send them out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You can go to yourdailydiamonds.com. We call them Daily
Mm.
Diamonds. And they're basically mental fitness in under 30 seconds. And so Monday, Wednesday, Friday, people will read these and it's like, hey, what are your thoughts about this? Or have you ever thought of this? And we give like all these different stories and these little insights into basically how do we create a more mentally fit mind and a more mentally fit person? Because to kind of bring it back to happiness, I believe mentally fit people are happier.
I would say so for sure because
Yeah.
I would say so for sure because you are able to take a pause and be present
Yeah,
and actually understand what is happening around you instead of reacting to the situation that's in front of you.
exactly. And that's kind of what we were talking about with the neutral, right? Is when these events happen, we probably aren't going to know exactly what to do, right?
Mm-mm.
Especially when it's adversity, right? So we actually walk people through, hey, when an event happens, just pause for a second, right? Just like understand the environment, understand what's actually going on. And then there's some deeper things that we can go into around where does our thinking then go? Does it go to the negative, which
Mm-hmm.
we categorize as saboteur thinking? So it's essentially our negative self-talk and things like that. Or does it go to the positive? And we call that sage thinking. And that's basically noticing gifts or opportunities or serving thoughts that's coming in from that event. Because the wild thing, and this kind of blew my mind when I first was introduced to it, every event is merely neutral. Every event, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like one of the things that Scott, my business partner, does is he asks a great question. He says, "How many of you are ever get stressed about, or how many of you would not want to do skydiving?" And people are like, "No way, I don't want to do skydiving, right? I don't want to do that."
Same though.
So, right? Which, and I'm like, every time he's asked me the question thousands of times, I don't even think I could give him an honest answer yet. I don't really know. And so, and so the exercise is, all right, so the event is skydiving. It's completely neutral. And the majority of people are like, I don't want to do that. That's a little scary. So they go into the negative, stressful anxiety. Well,
Mm.
so Scott had an incredible experience skydiving with his son, Marcus, before he passed away. So he associates skydiving with inspiration, right?
Positivity.
And life and love. So it's a
Mm.
different meaning, right? So that's a really, really important thing for all of us to understand is every event, and it might not sound true, yet every event is merely neutral, and we are the ones that essentially make it good or bad,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's our thinking that is ultimately going to do that. And we believe that if we can help people and teams and businesses, mothers, fathers, daughters, sons, be more mentally fit, more often than not, we're going to associate good things with those events. Even if we might
Mm-hmm.
not see them right off the bat, we're going to stay in that practice. And that's how we're going to essentially get to, how did this help me? What's the gift? What's the opportunity?
Mm-hmm. That's super key. And also, too, is the story, I'll take skydiving as an example
Mhm.
because we were just talking about that. Is that even your story? Do you know what I mean? Like, is
Right.
that a story that is even true for you? Or is it because someone that you know decided that skydiving was scary for them that now it's scary for you? You know what I mean?
Exactly
Like,
right.
what's the meaning that we're giving it based off of our lived experience, but also the stories that people tell us about who we are and how we should be, right?
100%. Right. And our parents, our coaches, they've passed those stories on to us.
Oh, yeah.
And so we have then said, oh, this is good, this is bad.
Mm-hmm.
When really, it's up to us to essentially create that own story, right? Like I love the line, create your story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't let somebody else write it for you. Open up your own book and put a pen to paper and create your own story.
I love that. I
Mhm.
love that. DJ, I could talk to you forever.
I
And I
know,
want to
so
ask you, right? I
glad
want to
to.
ask you my last question. It's a question I've been asking on the podcast for as long as the podcast has been existing. And it is, what can our listener do to create a little more happiness in their day, every day, starting today?
So this is an exercise that I do every night before I go to bed, and it takes me about 30 seconds. I would recommend, almost gets me emotional kind of thinking about it. I would recommend getting a little notebook. And so, like, I'm looking at mine right now, my little notebook's right here. And this is an exercise I got from a book called The Gap and the Gain.
Hmm.
And every night before you go to bed, write down 3 gains that you had that day.
Oh.
And they can be super simple. I woke up on time, had a good breakfast, and I talked to my mom, right? And this is kind of going back to that intentionality, right? I'm intentionally looking for the good that was in my day. Because if we don't take the time to do this, we might not necessarily ever realize there were some good things that actually happened. And
Hmm.
so find those 3 gains that happen in your day and then write down 3 gains that you want to happen the next day. And so like, for example, Simona, you were one of my gains for today.
Really?
Yes, you were one of my gains for today. I have Simona podcast. Our Skeleton Key Mastermind call was another
Yeah.
gain, and then I have a coaching session tonight with a young man who's just a rock star that I just love working with, and I'm so blessed to work with. So those are my 3 gains. Like that's a kick-ass day, right?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I
So I
love
would
that.
recommend people do that because it's helped me a ton just because it just gets our thinking to noticing all of the good and all of the happiness that we do have in our life.
I love that. That's awesome. This conversation has been so beautiful and has helped me just kind of take a step back and pause too and look at things in a different way. And so I'm really grateful for you. Thank you for coming on here. And where can our listeners find you so they can connect with you?
So if you want to connect with me on Instagram, it's just at DJ Logory, DJLOGORY. I'm getting more comfortable with actually putting content out and letting it rip, and I've gotten some really good responses from it, speaking more genuinely. And if people want to, like I mentioned, the mental fitness tips, they can go to yourdailydiamonds.com. They're completely
Awesome.
free. And if people want to actually go to our website, it's youracresofdiamonds.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, DJ.
Thank you very much for having me, Simona. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode on the Happiness Happens podcast. I hope you loved our conversation as much as we both did. Please connect with us and let us know you're listening. Tag us on social media so that we can see what you loved. I hope you have a beautiful day today. And remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it.